folks. You're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks. Your time is valuable. I'm not going to waste it. Let's get right to the interview. Hey, folks. Thanks for joining me on the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks. And if you love pets, if you love animals, this is the podcast for you. Today, we have Collin with us, and he is one of the co-owners of the Funky Bunch Pet Care. His wife, Meghan, I believe, is the one that's also the other owner. So welcome, Collin. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, super excited to be here, talk all things pets and pet sitting with you and kind of how we got started. So it's really my pleasure.
Good deal. Well, let's start off. Give us a little bit of backstory about where you were born, your childhood, kind of your education, how you met your wife, and we'll kind of progress into the creation of your career, and we'll just dive into all of it. So.
Okay, so how much time do we have again? What was the limit? No, I'm kidding.
There's no limit. Talk as much as you want.
Right. Well, so I was actually born and raised near Springfield, Missouri. I actually grew up in the town of Rogersville, just a little bit east of town there. And really grew up playing out in the country, riding dirt bikes. We had horses and chickens, all that kind of stuff. And I always had a love for biology. Had two brothers. I'm the middle of three brothers, so we were always getting into trouble, I'll say, but also exploring and doing lots of adventures. I was a member of Boy Scouts, all that stuff. Really loved being active. And I actually went to Missouri State University for my undergraduate degree in wildlife biology. I made a minor in marine science, and that's where I met my wife, Meghan. She was actually employed as a lab technician for this professor there. And I came in as a volunteer, and we were to be sorting river detritus under a microscope. And that's how actually I met her, and just kind of kept hanging around and took some marine biology classes with her. Then we got married, moved to Lubbock, Texas, so we could actually go to Texas Tech University to get some master's degrees. Meghan's is in environmental toxicology. Mine is in natural resource management. And it was actually out in Lubbock where we started to pet sit and do dog walking. As a graduate student, you don't make a whole lot of money. And we needed something that was really flexible, that was really something that we could make work with our research and travel schedule. And we just found pet sitting. It was Meghan's idea, actually. We had taken a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University class. And, he's all about paying off debt and making more money. And it was like, well, we obviously need to make more money because we're not making very much right now at all. And she came up to the idea of doing dog sitting. I actually had wanted to do an aquarium business because in between graduating from my undergraduate degree and going into the master's, I was actually an aquarist with the Bass Pro Shop there in Springfield.
Oh, cool.
As getting to dive the tanks, feed all the animals, and it was a lot of fun. One of my favorite jobs I've ever had. Well, her idea took off a lot faster than mine. So we don't run an aquarium business these days. We run a dog walking and pet sitting business. So the business was her idea, and we just never stopped. We moved to the DFW area so that actually I could go get another degree in quantitative biology, and we kept pet sitting. We had our two kids in DFW area, and then we moved back to Missouri to be closer to family. And I actually took a job with the Missouri Department of Conservation as a watershed and streams biologist up in Sedalia, Missouri, and loved the job. Got to go out, talk to landowners, help them problem solve, understand what's going on with erosion, and help them with grants and funding to do stream bank restoration projects, and just really loved getting out and being able to do that.
Is that where you were hoping your education was going to lead before the pet sitting stuff kind of came into be?
Yeah, so the original intent of going to get a master's and a PhD and going that goal was we were actually wanting to go do like research at a university was our original goal in design.
Okay.
We wanted to be, doing research, teaching, all that fun stuff. Through my PhD program, I started to be more interested in more applied and more conservation kind of things. And so when the job with the Missouri Department of Conservation popped up, it's a stellar organization,
Hmm.
and they do a lot of great work. I've always been in love with them, and couldn't pass that up.
Yeah.
And so was kind of like, okay, well, this is it. We found this, and going to do this for the rest of our lives, which didn't happen.
Right.
But COVID actually, when COVID hit, they sent everybody home. Yeah, because we weren't, in order to do field work, we couldn't be talking to people. We weren't allowed to go, we couldn't travel in the same car. They had all these regulations and stuff around us, and just trying to keep everybody safe. And so I started working from home, and I realized that moment that I cannot sit in the same place for very long. I
Yeah.
I have to be a very active person. And there were days where, I'm just plugging away at the computer and I'm sitting in my chair, just kind of spinning, it literally spinning in a circle. Like my brain is eating itself. I've got to be doing something else. And we had been pet sitting a little bit, even up in Sedalia. And I was talking with Meghan, and she said, I really love having you home. I'm really glad that we can be here together as a family. What I want more of this. And so we thought about it and went, well, we're kind of doing this pet sitting thing already. What if we just did more of that, right? Like, what if I stopped my 40-hour a week job and dedicated those 40 hours to trying to grow our business? And that really was the starting point of Funky Bunch, was Meghan and I coming together and going, let's do something different for our family, so that we can try and just, see what happens with this, right? Might as well try it.
Hmm. The I guess the initial launch of pet sitting, I can see how you would just have one or two dogs. There's gotta there's gotta come a point when, I don't know, do you need more property? You need crates, you need a garage. Like, I don't understand the logistics of how many animals do you have at once, or are you going to the homes of the people and getting their dogs, or what are the logistics of that?
Now, this is a fantastic question, and I actually am really glad that you touched on this point of words matter. What we
Yeah.
use to describe things is important, and this is where there's a ton of confusion, even within the pet care industry. The words don't get used in the same way, even more so from a client perspective. So I've been saying these words, pet sitting and dog walking. And what a lot of your listeners may immediately think of is a kennel or a boarding facility. Still others may think, oh, I want somebody to come and stay in my house for hours
Hmm.
and hours or sleep in my house.
Right.
Still others may think, oh, I want somebody to come over a couple times a day. And so when we started with out call only services because, and this is really important, the dog walking and pet sitting industry is unregulated in the extent that you don't have to take a test, you don't have to be certified in something, you don't have these things. But boarding and daycare facilities have to have a license, and be inspected by the state. If you have somebody who's keeping pets in their home overnight, that's a boarding, especially for pay, right? Because that's what this is about. That's a boarding facility. A lot of counties and cities have very specific regulations about what they do and do not allow for within their areas and zoning. And so many people start boarding in their home, and then they get a notice from the city saying, we need to see your kennel license.
Mm.
And then they don't have one. They can't qualify one because they won't pass inspection, and they have to shut down. And so that was something that we were hyper aware of we were not interested in really keeping pets in our home, um, because we wanted some separation. We wanted to
Yeah.
be able to go to bed at night and not have dogs barking. Also, the paperwork, the inspections, all that stuff was just something that and then the risk of not getting that, of, okay, well, if the city says no, well, that means I've got to move. That means I
Yeah.
got to move out to places that don't have those regulations. I didn't feel like moving house. So
Yeah.
what what we provide specifically are are in-home visits where we come over multiple times a day to take care of people's pets. This is different than something like house sitting or overnight care. Many people may want to hire somebody to come and sleep in their home overnight. This isn't something that we provide. We come over multiple times throughout the day. We'll come over as early as 6 a.m. and as late as 10 p.m. at night. And we offer 7 days a week, 365 days a year, rain or shine.
Hmm.
So, we have had to. Originally, it was just me doing all of that. And that's one of the things that in the industry, there's always somebody who wants to travel. A client will always want to take a day trip to Kansas City or to Eureka Springs or, something like that. It never stops. You never turn off the tap. And I actually got sick with COVID while over Christmas a couple years ago. And I didn't have a team. We didn't have employees. It was just me, and Meghan was at home taking care of the kids. And I had to do 20 visits that day because it was Christmas. And I was sick with COVID and could barely function. And that's where it hit me that I can't do this by myself anymore, right? We've got to bring on employees. And so we hire employees. We train them in pet first aid and CPR. We, have bonding. We have specific pet sitting and dog walking liability insurance. We do background checks. They go through 20 hours of training before they ever get out there and do anything by themselves. And now we work together and as a collaborative effort to make sure that everything's taken care of.
When you go to someone's home, I'm assuming they have maybe a keypad that allows you to get into the house or to the garage or whatever. The benefit, the way you do it, is the homeowner is going to provide the food and the collar, and really all you have to do is show up with a leash. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of benefit to this. And you mentioned the keypad. Yeah, we will use door codes, garage codes, and keys. If they want to use a key, we use a lockbox. So that way we don't have to hold on to keys, because I don't want to have to pay $1,000 to have somebody's house rekeyed if we lose it. Right? Or I should say our insurance pay for that. So when pets get to stay in their own home, you get a lot of benefits. First and foremost is way less stress. Pets are most comfortable in their own home, in their own environment. They get to be around their own pillows. They get to hear all the same familiar sounds. They get to walk the familiar paths. They get to have their bowls, and they get to have their lights, and they get to play in their backyard. It's a much more peaceful transition or time with the pet than trying to take them to a new place and get them adjusted. Secondarily, there's way less risk of exposure to diseases or fights and altercations. Obviously, there's a risk in everything, but when you have an immunocompromised dog, or you have a dog who's elderly or really young, or maybe their immune system is kind of fussy, you can keep them at home and keep them away from all of those things, because they're not going to be interacting with 80 other dogs. And it does make the pet owner's life a lot easier as well. So you can wake up in the morning. Our clients get to wake up in the morning, have a bag packed, leave to wherever they need to go, and then come back to their home. And their mail has been taken care of. Their trash has been brought out and brought in. Their dog is home, or their cat is home, all happy and ready for them. And it's clean, because we do light house cleaning while we're there to make sure we're picking up after ourselves. And so the owner doesn't have to change a single thing about their day or their routine, and neither does the dog. And that really helps make sure that the stress is low. And when stress is low, it sets everybody else up for success.
That's smart. Everything you're saying is just like, I never really thought of that stuff, but it makes total sense. And I had one question pop into my head. Is there an initial meet and greet with the dog, or is the first time you're taking a dog, and it's just, I'm going to use a dog as an example. Cats don't normally go for a walk. They do whatever they want. But do you show up and initially meet the dog so you're familiar to them at least once, or is the first time you take them for a walk the first time you're actually meeting them?
Yeah, so this is another kind of thing. Again, we talk about how the industry isn't regulated. So we talk about best practices. For us and our perspective, we believe that there should be an extensive vetting process for both parties. the pet owner should get to experience the person that they're going to be talking to and get to see and make sure that they're comfortable with who is going to be taking care of their pet.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, the pet sitter, the dog walker, should fully vet the client and their dog or their cat or their guinea pig or their whatever it is to make sure that they are fully comfortable for caring for that. So all of our clients go through an extensive onboarding process where they have to fill out about 50 questions per animal about what they like, what they don't like, feeding, medication, behavior. We ask about where their cleaning products are. We ask about, how they want their lights left overnight or how they want their, shades drawn so that we fully know what's going on. Then we review all of that for additional questions. If we have none, we move forward and we get to meet the owner, go over into their home, talk with them, do a behavior assessment of the pet that we're going to be caring for so that we're all on the same page and fully comfortable with this before we move forward. Because the last thing that we want is for our client to be in Belize or to be in Spain and us calling them going, well, your dog isn't actually okay and we can't take care of them. You need to do something else. Bye. Right? That's terrible.
Right.
And so we just want, when we vet, we really are making sure that the client and the pet, both of them are a good fit for how we operate and our clients understand. We've heard horror stories from other people who they didn't ask enough questions. And what turned out was the client actually expected the pet sitter to stay there 24/7 and to never leave. But they had a life, they had a job, they had other things, they had other dogs that needed to get walked, and nobody ended up being happy and actually kind of spiraled out and got really nasty. So we want to make sure everything's out in the open before we start actually booking services.
Are there any types when a customer calls you and they say, hey, my name is so-and-so, this is the type of animal that I have. Are there certain breeds that you typically will stay away from, or are there certain types of animals that you don't deal with? There's some unusual exotic pets like a sugar glider or some kind of fish or whatever that people may have. Do you do all animals, or do you have what's your window of we'll deal with this versus not?
Sure. So with a couple different passes at that, we don't have any breed restrictions.
Okay.
We believe that with the right care, training, oversight, there's no reason for us to have any breed restrictions in that. Because again, we're not trying to mesh certain dogs with other dogs and have play groups and have all of this stuff. We are really screening for, will this pet be okay with a stranger in their home multiple times? Is there some stress there? Do they have a history of that? So we ask all sorts of questions to try and get at that. When you have friends over for game night, what happens? What does the dog do? What does the cat do when you take them to the vet? How are they with the groomer? Trying to get an idea of the life of this pet and the stress that they have around them.
Mm-hmm.
Then, above and beyond that, we will say, as long as the pet is legal to own and we feel comfortable caring for it, we're going to take it on. Now, why is that legal to own really important? Well, it turns out a lot of cities and states have restrictions on what is a legal animal, what licensing and licensure is required to have that pet. And if it is illegal to own, our insurance will not pay for veterinary expenses or damages to us if we take that on, because our insurance and that's an aspect that a lot of people don't consider, is the liability of what's happening here. What is actually going on? We see a lot of people who will say, oh, I want my, my tree trimmer to be insured, or my fence builder to be insured, or my plumber to be insured, but my pet sitter, oh no, it's fine. Anybody can come into my house.
Yeah.
Our insurance should really cover three things: damages to pet, property, and third party. And so a good insurance policy will cover all of that. And this isn't just a general liability insurance. This is pet specific. Care, custody, and control is a big one in the pet sitting world. Will it pay for being rekeyed? Will it pay if the neighbor gets bit by the dog, or the dog gets hit by a car because something wasn't secured on the leash? All of these aspects are stuff that we have to always check. And one of those first things is this pet legal? So what was it? 2 years ago, we had a client reach out And they wanted us to take care of an animal that we had never taken care of before. And I actually had to call the city to make sure that this animal was legal to own, that it was okay um, to have. And I'll never forget the animal control officer talking to me and going, "Huh, I need to talk with our lawyers
Yeah.
because I'm not sure." And the crazy part about and so they had to call their lawyers, get in touch with each other, then call me and say, "Yeah, this animal is okay." And the animal that I'm talking about is a prairie dog. it
Huh.
was There was confusion. I had the animal code pulled up and I was looking at it and talking to people, and it was hard to know if this was actually legal to own, and without a lot of licensing and inspections and stuff. And turns out they were like, yeah, no, okay, no, we think, given how this is currently written, it is legal to own a prairie dog. And so we were able to move forward with that. But that's got the kind of thing that we've always got to check.
Just call it a squirrel and move on. Maybe that's something you could do. Glue a tail on it or something like that.
Right.
Um, so this kind of thing, if someone is going to, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you franchise, or do you hire people to work for you in different cities?
Sure. So we have chosen to hire people to work for us
Okay.
in across two different cities. So we do service Springfield, Missouri, and Sedalia, Missouri. And
Okay.
the reason we have chosen to do that is so that we can have control and consistency and predictability in our care.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, pet sitting, dog walking is a personal thing, right?
Mhm.
It's a very individualized kind of care. And what we want to try and do is reduce as much variation in the quality of care as possible. And so by hiring people, having them go through our extensive training and vetting process, that is our way of ensuring that when we say Funky Bunch has, XYZ, or we do that, we always do this. That's how we are able to ensure that is through that kind of oversight.
Well, that consistency, to pull an example out of left field, if you look at Starbucks coffee, I can go to a Starbucks in California and Kansas City and New York City. And if I order the same thing, it's going to taste the same no matter where I'm at, because they have an established consistency across the board. So I can see that in your line of work. If you're hiring people to work for you, you know that they're going to do the same thing, whether they're in Sedalia or Springfield or Branson or wherever you may grow to be. So the the specific type of pet thing, have you ever had a pet that, I would assume it would be a dog, but I don't know if you do reptiles or whatever. Have you ever had yourself or your wife or somebody become injured by a pet? How would that scenario play out if a dog were to bite you?
Right. So we have not had a bite incident.
Okay.
And we go through a lot of, again, we do a lot of, it's more than just showing up and slapping the leash on and getting out the
Right.
door, right? We want to know behaviors of pets, and so we do extensive body language training for us and our staff, with ongoing education that we do weekly team meetings to talk about things and problem solve, and we do go to seminars and go to conferences and things like that. So a lot of this is just education, and always pulling back, never pushing. So we're a fear-free company. We're certified fear-free. It's a special training that we've gone through. And part of that is working with animals and not forcing them into situations.
Hmm.
Obviously, if I'm standing in the middle of the road and the dog has stopped walking and a Mack truck is barreling towards us, I'm
Yeah.
going to force that dog off the road, right? I'm
Sure.
not just going to say, oh, no, it's fine. He doesn't want to move. It's okay. Right?
Hmm.
So we do have those. But we will always say it's better to pick up a poop or a pee mess than it is to bandage a wound.
Yeah.
If we feel as though we are putting ourselves in a situation where that dog has no other, you know, recourse but to react, we will always back off and stop the visit. And so we do have protocols in that. If there were to be a bite, right? This is something that comes up sometimes with clients, especially if they've never left their dog in the care of somebody else before.
Right.
We do talk about how first and foremost, everybody's safety is our priority. And so if there is a bite, we are going to need to remove ourselves from the situation to make sure that we are safe first. At that point, we are going to stop care and we are going to contact our client's emergency contact person who needs to be local and has met the pet before, to come in and kind of have a cover over for the time while we rework the plan. In the event of that, the other thing that we provide as a business is all of our employees are covered under workers' compensation. Again, something that hardly anybody thinks about. Why would I need to hire somebody who has workers' comp on their employees or themselves? Well, it's because if we didn't have that, we would have to have the client's homeowner's insurance policy pay for medical expenses.
Yeah.
And that's not something we feel is fair to put on the homeowner. So workers' compensation would kick in at that point, pay for those expenses, and we would move on, and we'd have to then reassess whether we could re-engage with that dog or that cat in those situations. Probably working in tandem with some trainers that we have partnerships with.
So you mentioned something a minute ago about the training that your folks go through when they come on board. What, let's say I came to you and I said, I'd like to work for you. What's the process like when you, aside from filling out an application and getting all the information about what it pays and all that stuff, what kind of training and how long does it typically take for someone when they start with you to be out in the field doing the job that they were hired to do?
Yeah. And this is, I will say that this is something that we recommend whether you are going to be hiring people or whether you're going to be a solo operator, to get some sort of training and education before you start offering services. It will help you immensely in knowing what risks you want to or don't want to take on. So after we have an employee who has successfully gone through, we've got 4 stages of our hiring process. After they get the clear background check, they come in and we immediately start working with them on pet care basics. So they go through dog and cat body language, dog and cat fear responses, how we respond to those. We go into training things that a lot of people take for granted, right? Like, what's the right way to hold a leash? Okay, how do we hold a leash? How do we do leash corrections and maybe some leash training? What does it mean to have a successfully scooped cat litter box? Something that you might think, oh, well, that's pretty easy. There's no poop or pee left. But we go ahead and train on that, again, to have consistency in what we do. Everything then from checklists that we have to, how to medicate, in different ways of medicating a dog or cat with a pill, and methods that we can use in case the first 5 don't work. And we have to get into that. Then we also do, like I said, the behavior, the body language. And we do a lot of online courses. We do about 6 hours of online courses that are a combination of training procedures that Meghan and I have put together, and in combination with some other industry videos. And at that point, we show up and we do in-person training. And this is where this is where they are shadowing me or another senior team member on particular visits, to get them in the routine of what we do, how we do it. How do we write reports? What does it mean to take an amazing photo? Do we understand all of the functions of our camera on our smartphone, and are we using them correctly in the dead of night, in the middle of the day, in action shots? So we have little mini training sessions on how to take photos, and really making sure that everybody's up to speed. After about 20 hours, then our employees can start doing solo visits. But even then, when we get a new client or a weird client, like we're taking care of it's a mini potbelly pig today. Well, they haven't experienced that before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to step back in and train them on that particular client, make sure they have the resources for understanding, the health and care and well-being of that particular animal. And then we'll keep moving forward.
If someone wants to apply for you, what would be an earnings expectation that they should have when they come in? I'm assuming it's an hourly rate, or is it per job, or how does that typically play out?
Right. So this is another difference, and there's a lot of discussion in the industry around this of
Hmm.
do we pay per piece or do we pay hourly? We do hire employees, so we pay an hourly rate,
Okay.
and this covers a lot of different things because again, we're not just going to one location and then staying there.
Right.
We also need to make sure that we are compensating for drive time. So,
Hmm.
how long does it take me to go from visit to visit? Additionally, we also pay a mileage reimbursement rate of 60 cents a mile or 20 cents a mile, or we have different tiers for
Hmm.
how long people have been with us to make sure that that is compensated. So what we do is we start everybody coming in at minimum wage for their training period. And then after a successful completion of the training period, we do pay increases every quarter up to an hour, up to a year. And then we do annual increases after that. So some of our employees, when you take into account the hourly, the drive time with the mileage, and with the tips that we share, it usually averages out $18 to $20 an hour, with depending with seniority.
I hadn't thought about the tips. That's probably something that most folks would leave if you're taking care of their pets. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so because we also offer, we do an online. Our software allows our clients to book and pay online. That
Okay.
also increases the kind of tips that they're able to leave. And so what we do is, and again, everybody's going to do this differently, but we take all the tips, and let's say a client travels for 5 visits, and one of our employees does 3 of those visits, and the person left $15. Well, because they left 15, that means each visit is worth a value of $3. And if the one person does 3 visits, well, they just get a $9 tip added to them. And so the intent of the client was to tip their sitter. So we make sure and tip according to the amount of work that each person did for that person.
Hmm. Your business, you're in Sedalia and you're in Springfield, Missouri. Those two towns, Sedalia is what, 22, 23,000 people? I forget.
Yeah,
Um,
it's about 21, 22 actually.
yeah. And Springfield, I mean, it depends on the day, I guess, but 165 or so, 160, something like that, 1,000 as far as population. Are you are you planning to grow your business and move to Branson, or are you planning to go to St. Louis, or how's your growth plan kind of playing out if as far as you looking forward?
Yeah, so this is something that Megan and I talk about quite a lot is when to grow and how to grow. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we are focusing on right now is really nailing down our target client, right? Who's a really good fit for us before we make that expansion. So one thing that we are looking into doing is actually, Sedalia. We've pretty much got that in. It's a 6 mile service radius. So that's the other thing to consider if you are
Mhm.
interested in getting into this is how far are you going to drive? Let me tell you, a 10 mile radius doesn't sound like a whole lot. But when you're driving 20 miles and you're spending 40 minutes in the car in between visits, it
Yeah.
eats into your profits real fast.
Mhm.
And if you're paying somebody to do that, it is even more egregious, and you really have to watch that. So we've got a 6 mile radius, so 12 miles around Sedalia. And this pretty much captures everything that we can capture there. So, really, the growth is going to come from just increasing awareness that our service is there. In Springfield, the opportunity to grow is really into the cities that surround it. So think
Sure.
Republic, Willard, Nixa, Ozark, Battlefield, even out in Rogersville. Rogersville's the fastest growing city in the state by percent increase, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So what it would actually be subdividing the service radius into each one of those and having localized employees in those areas to even
Okay.
further decrease the amount of drive time, and increase our ability to serve people with excellence.
Are most of your clients, and I don't know if you have any rough percentages as far as the breakdown, but I would assume that the majority of your clients are with a dog, and then you have some that are cats or maybe some other more exotic pets. Is that 75% of your business dogs or
I'd say about 70, well, we'll say 70% of our business is dogs, 28% of our business is cats, and 2% is something else. I with that with this, when Megan and I first started pet sitting, so that was coming up on 13 years ago, people would never hire us to take care of their cat. It would always be, I have a dog in my house. There's a cat somewhere. Don't worry about them. Right?
Yeah.
it's another thing lives in this house,
Right.
but it's okay. Now we have cat owners are increasingly wanting personalized and specialized care for their cats. Gone are the days of, and it's very interesting to think about. 15 years ago, people would leave the house, they'd throw a bunch of food in a dish and have a big water jug for the cat, and they would put down like 2 or 3 extra litter boxes, and they'd come back like a week and a half later, right? They would that's all
Yeah.
people did. Now we've got automatic feeders, fountains that auto recycle and super filter the water, and we've got litter boxes that clean and can tell you measurements of how much they pooped and send it to your phone. And cat owners want us to spend an hour or two with their cats every day. And it's just automatically assumed, oh, I just want somebody to come in here and play with my cat for an hour. Can you play cat TV with them? Can you make sure you cuddle with them and use this brush? And we're doing this thing. And they're really wanting that. So actually, the past, I think, 2 years, client base wise, we've grown our overall client base. But of that, we've grown more cat sitting specific clients that just have a cat than dog only clients.
The pet business, I forget what the amount was that I read, but pet care and pet services and toys and things like that just a few years ago was turning into a $2 or $3 billion a year industry. So I can see it's just going to keep growing, and you should be able to expand, but at what pace you find comfortable is probably the question that you and your wife ponder.
Yeah, when you're expected to reach what I think it is supposed to be like $500 billion industry in the next 7 years or something like that. It really is about understanding who you want to serve and how you serve them. One of the most frustrating parts about being in business for anything is, well, I offer the thing that you asked for. I offered the finishing, or I offered the installation, or I offered the plumbing, or I offered the whatever. But the person might not like your policies or your cancellations or your things like that. And so it really is about going, I want the people who need dog walking or need cat sitting or need their parakeet, let out to fly around and fed and enrichment toys and whatever. But connecting with the people who see that value. And it's not just I guess I have to do this, right? It's more of I want this. And that's really the shift that we're seeing in pet owners. The saying used to be 70% of pet owners would forego medical intervention in their life if it meant they could provide medical intervention in the life of their pet. Right? Obviously, that means that pets are very important to people. And it's only gotten more intense, where now pet owners genuinely want humanistic experiences and spending levels on their pets. They want customization to the nth degree. They want experiences over products. So they actually just want their puppy, they want their cat to have fun and to experience new things instead of just buying it another toy or another thing. And that's really what's shaping a lot of the growth in the industry. A really great example for you of this, there's a company called Farmer's Dog. They make a wet food, a raw food that gets shipped to you every month, right? And you portion it out to your dog. Well, one thing that they started to do really early on, and it's got us thinking a lot about like, how do we tap into this level for what we do? But when you get that packet of dog food, it doesn't just say dog food on it. It says Baxter's dog food. They customize the label to the name of your dog. And that's really what our clients are looking for. Is the service that you're offering customizable to me? And how do then we express that to them so that they know the value that they're getting?
Yeah, I think you're the first guest that I've had that works with their spouse to run a business. And there's got to be some challenges there. I mean, I get along with my wife very well, and we don't really fight hardly ever. So, but running a business is a whole different ball of wax. So, to anybody listening that is thinking about wanting to start any kind of a business, I mean, you are an entrepreneur in the entire sense, but what's it like to have the person that you live with and that you're married to also be your partner in a business? What kind of challenges and obstacles do you run into? And how do you separate work from your personal life?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think what and that is just first off the biggest challenge is separation, is turning it off, is sitting down at dinner with the kids and not saying, "Well, anyway, what's the social media post that we're going to do tomorrow? And did you see that this
Mm.
client said this thing? And we got to get this thing booked, and I got to get the email newsletter ready, and blah 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 blah. And the insurance is renewing." That is the single hardest part, is carving out those times. And so what we've had to do and work on, and we fail at this all the time, we have to go, what hat am I wearing right now? Am I wearing husband hat? Am I wearing, father hat? Am I wearing business owner hat?
Mhm.
And knowing that there are times specifically for those. And we've even had to come through some busy periods where we just have to, on our calendar, at after the kids are in bed, I've got in there, and we just call it office hours. And that's the time that we dedicate to talking about things business, because the rest of the day is hectic. We can catch little snippets here and there, but I've got to just dedicate some time. And that helps us prevents us a little bit from eating into the dinner times, the lunch times, the times where we just want to go to the grocery store or go for a family walk or trip or things like that, without eating into that. So
Yeah,
having that dedicated, sorry, go
if you
ahead.
have the dedicated time, then it's go. I can wait. This question can wait until a few hours when we have that dedicated time to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah.
go, well, this is important. And so I would initially want to talk about it immediately. I don't have that luxury. I want to enjoy this picnic that we're having at the park as a family, or I want to enjoy the time at the zoo or whatever. Tonight at 9 o'clock, we're going to talk about it. And it's, sure, is it late? Am I going to be tired? Yeah, but I've just got to add it to the to-do list then. And so we'll go into the calendar and we'll add it into the notes part of that. The great thing about working together is that we are complete polar opposites in so many different aspects,
Hmm.
including what we're good at. And I have really grown to appreciate that, of going, there's so many things to get done in a particular day. If I was in charge in all of them, none of them would get done.
Right.
And so it's not just distributing the work, but it's also going, Megan, you are amazing at crafting a social media post. You are amazing at route planning and knowing which clients we need to hit and in what order. I'm really bad at that. So I'm going to focus on writing the training manuals, and I'm going to focus on doing the new client intake forms, and I'm going to focus on those things. And so we can really both help each other operate in their where they need to be operating, and kind of let the rest go and know that, no, they've got it. And so it does take that level of trust to know that I have to not futz with this, and because they're going to be taking care of it, and they're going to do a lot better job than I am.
That's something that I think some people struggle with when they're teaming up with either a friend or a family member. That can get tricky when you're working together. It can either work magnificently or it can just blow up in your face. But leaning into your strengths and recognizing your weaknesses and having somebody else go, you are better at that than I am. Please do that. I'll focus on this. If you can have that maturity and that insight into your business relationship, you can really take things, you can go a lot further, a lot faster when you lean into that way.
You really can, because it's not all relying on you.
Right.
And then the person who actually A, is really good at it, and B, probably likes doing it, is
Yes.
actually doing the work, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm not over here dragging my feet going, oh gosh,
Mhm.
I guess I have to do that, slapping something together and moving it on. But it does take that trust. It takes being humble and admitting that I am not really good at all this stuff
Mhm.
and I need help, and I have a helper, and I have somebody who I can trust to do this.
You you are entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of aspects. The word entrepreneur is always kind of fun and like I'm in charge and I'm doing my own thing and I'm going to make a ton of money. And I think a lot of people gloss over or just completely miss that there's a lot of grinding and a lot of boring work that needs to happen. I got to sit down and pay our insurance. We need to change our coverage. We've got to pay these bills. We have to do this, social media stuff. Or there's a lot of things that people forget is part of the day-to-day operations to keep something like your business going. Is there something that you have any advice for folks listening about what it's like to be an entrepreneur and stuff you really need to focus on?
Yeah, well, it's the non-sexy stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not the, "Oh, I'm not I'm not making another sale, or I'm not upgrading this thing or getting a new whatever. I'm not just spending money. I actually have to, like, work on a budget, and I have to sit down and, like, plan and stuff."
Yeah.
We have a saying, "We do hard things." And sometimes things are hard because they're really difficult and I don't understand what I'm doing. Sometimes they're hard because I don't want to do this with every fiber of my being,
Hmm.
but I know I do them. I do them because they need to get done and they're beneficial. And so one thing that we've had to work on is linking the monotonous stuff, the boring stuff, to the outcome. And I'll just do, for us, route planning is a great example. Route planning is a super non-interesting, it's grueling to sit down and go, okay, I've got 15 clients that I need to see today. What are their addresses? And what's the most efficient route in between them, taking into account age, client specifications, and medication requirements, and ranking all of that stuff together. Hopefully, one day AI will help with this. It is
Hmm.
not there at all. This is something we have messed with and worked on for a while, and it's not there. So we have to sit down and actually get this done. And it's one of the least. I can't tell you how much I don't like this. I really,
Yeah.
but I know that, like, when Megan's working on it or I'm helping her with it, we get to do amazing things when the route is well planned, because the team members aren't having to drive all over creation, so they're
Yeah.
actually getting to do more of what they want to be doing instead of spending time in traffic. Clients are getting their needs met, and we are able to perform well when we show up for that client. And so really linking a lot of these boring, monotonous things to a vision or to your mission as a company or as a person, it helps you go, okay, I see the value in this. I might not want to do it. And that's actually a question that we ask new people who apply. Tell me about a time where you didn't want to do something, but you did it anyway.
Hmm.
And the best answers are when they say things like, well, I was what someone recently said, I was an overnight janitor for a hospital, and I hated cleaning the toilets, but I knew that if they weren't clean, it wasn't sanitary for people who were actually sick, and it wasn't a pleasant experience for when people had to be there for bad things anyway. You don't want to
Hmm.
be there talking to a spouse or a relative who's dying and then have a disgusting toilet. It was
Right.
their little way of helping in that situation. And it was like, man, you get it. You understand that these little things matter, and
Yeah.
it's not just about these big flashy things. Everything matters top to bottom, and we do have to care as much of for everything that we do.
I've picked up on the fact that you really dislike the routing. You've mentioned that a couple of times, so I know that's obviously not your favorite thing to do. But what would be the one or two top things that you love about this career that you and your wife have developed and grown? What's your most favorite thing?
Yeah. This is something that I it took us a little bit to see exactly what we were doing. Fundamentally, what we do, what pet care is, it's a people business. And this is really counterintuitive to a lot of people. They say, "Oh, what do you mean? Aren't you taking care of dogs and cats and walking and bunnies and it's puppy cuddles and kitty kisses, right? Isn't that all it
Hmm.
is?" Well, no. But I have never been called by a dog for a walk, right? A cat has never reached into their pocket to pay me for scooping their litter.
Hmm.
It's always a person at the other end of that line who has a problem, who has concerns and worries and biases, who has a past and a history that they're bringing into this. They have needs. And what I've been able to latch onto, and what Meghan and I have really leaned into, that we find so much satisfaction it's in helping people. Our mission as a company is to help pet parents live their best life through every stage of life with their pet. When we get to allow people to go to work, take a vacation, seeing a dying family member, stress-free, guilt-free, worry-free, they just leave, right? And they trust their home. They trust their most precious thing in their life in a lot of cases, right? Their dog or their cat.
Mm-hmm.
They just leave that to us. And then they come back home and everything's okay. That amount of trust is what keeps us going, is knowing that our clients just can live their life and not have to think twice about it.
When you hear, or you have a customer that comes to you and they say, "This is what I want to go on vacation," are there key phrases or key words that someone who works for you can use that kind of convey to the customer not just what you offer, because you can have that on a menu, either on your website or on a piece of paper that shows these are the services that we offer and whether they're broken down by cost or whatever. But what do you find is an effective phrase or two or style of communication to get across to your customers what you just said about, I want you to enjoy your vacation and you don't have to worry that your dog or your cat or your pet is going to be affected by that, and you'll come back and everything will be fine?
Yeah, I actually had this same question asked to me by a marketer who I was talking with them, and I was showing them our website and everything. And I was listing out the certifications and the training and the background checks and the this and the professionalism and and he said basically like, okay, but what does that get me?
Yeah.
Why do I care? And so we spend a lot of time thinking about this because it is hard to connect, because it's a service that the client, the person, never interacts with. We're only there when they're not home, right?
Yeah.
So how do I get them to see the value of something that they don't personally directly benefit from? And what we do is we link it back to their love for their pet. There's two ways, right? So their love for their pet and then the ease on their life. So something that we'll say a lot of is like, yeah, lunchtime is for eating, not worrying about getting back home to see your pet and spending time in traffic, right?
Mm.
Work is for working, not unsure about whether you're not being preoccupied that your pet is having to hold their bladder.
Yeah.
Vacations are much better when you sleep well at night. So let us give you a better night's rest. These kind of imagery are what we found help people connect more to our service above and beyond just I can rattle off. I already did at the beginning of the episode, like, oh yeah, we'll do mail and packages and lights and we'll do this and we'll cleaning and medications and blah, blah, blah. Like that just tells it what we do. It doesn't tell what they get. And so finding this emotional connection and experience of how they can live their life better is how we found the messaging really lands.
The word you used a minute ago, preoccupied, that's the word that popped out to me, because I don't want to be on vacation or at work or commuting or at a party or whatever and have to be preoccupied with, is my dog okay? Did they get food? Did the water freeze, etc.? And you remove that preoccupied mindset so they can focus and be present in what they want to do.
I'll give you this example. Very recently, we had a client who we were kind of going back and forth with about some care and some things that were coming up. Suddenly, she booked a very last minute trip, and we didn't hear back from her at all. And we sent our updates. Our clients get, when we arrive, they get notified, they get photos and a video and a written report, and again, all this stuff. And we didn't hear back from her at all. And come to find out, she had to leave immediately to go see a very, very, very dear friend in the hospital before they passed away. And at first, we were all we didn't find out till later.
Mm-hmm.
And so during the visits, we were sitting here, a little like, oh, why didn't she respond? She usually gives us a thumbs up or says thank you or something. And then when we found this out, we suddenly realized, wow, she got to say goodbye to a really close friend, and she didn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
She literally booked while she was driving away and knew without a shadow of a doubt that we were going to be there. And when I think about that word preoccupied, that's one of the illustrations that I can give to show that. And I will say that level of trust doesn't come easy. We work really hard. And as a pet sitter, as a dog walker, like, trust is your most important and most valuable asset. And it can get lost in an instant. It's one thing that you should never take for granted, because it is here today, gone tomorrow for the slightest thing.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because people value their pets in their home, and it's their stuff, right? It's okay. Like, we have to understand that we have to earn that, and it's not just given freely. And so when that happens, it's one of the most beautiful and overwhelming things that we can experience when somebody goes, I have an emergency. I'm not even going to ask if you got my reservation, because I'm already driving down the road at 100 miles an hour. I trust you that much.
Yeah.
Like, that's overwhelming, and something that we want to make sure that we can provide at every stage for every person.
That trust, it doesn't matter what line of work you're in, whether it's sales or whatever. I mean, anybody in any industry, business or whatever, trust, if you have that, that's huge. You can't really buy trust. That's something that has to be earned. So, if someone wants to come and work for you, what type of personality and soft skills do you look for when you're hiring someone? And are there certain things that are automatic disqualifiers? Like, I'm allergic to cats, so I would not apply because I don't want to be around cats because it's just a mess.
Right.
But,
Well,
so that seems like a deal breaker that I wouldn't even put you through.
oh, well, I'll say this: Meghan is allergic to cats, and look at the
Uh,
line of work that we're in.
oh, I know.
Because
Okay.
we have to remember, we're over in a house for maybe 30 minutes or an hour, so it does
Yeah.
depend on the severity, like, of
Sure.
the allergy. Like, if you come over and immediately you're asphyxiating and you can't see, and, like, yeah, okay, this is not a good fit.
Right.
But we've trained people who are allergic to cats before. I'll start with the deal breakers, because it's I understand the sentiment for why people say this, but it is an immediate turnoff to us. When people say, and it's amazing the amount of times that I see this phrase, I like pets better than people.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? Like, they're applying to a pet care company. So they want to say, oh, I'm all about pets and pets and pets and pets and pets and pets and pets. But I just said, we're not all about pets. I'm all about people and serving them with excellence through the high quality care that we provide their pets.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to really invert that and have people who want to put people first. Have a team that is people focused. So that, right out of the way, is a huge red flag for what we ask. And another one is, we have a question on our application that says, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? This is a ridiculous question. Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Two things. One, I only communicate to my clients through writing. So I have to have exceptional writing skills with excellent grammar, punctuation, capitalization, complete sentences, the whole 9 yards. So if you can't write well, that's something that we can work on and train if the other skills are there, but it's a big red flag that's going to pop up. Secondarily, we get a lot of people who respond to this that say, this is a stupid question. I don't understand what that has to do with pet care. Let me tell you about some of the requests that our client asks of us to do that don't have anything to do with the pet. So are we open? Are we open-minded? And can I make it fun, right? How do they respond? Can they give me some level of sequential order of answers? Because I have to communicate sometimes problems and concerns that I have with somebody's pet only over text, and it has to make sense. And so we look for those kind of critical thinking skills in there. A lot of people think that they have to have prior pet care experience in order to work for us. This isn't the case. We are fully confident in our ability to train just about anybody who's passionate enough to help people with the skills necessary. You don't have to know how to scoop a litter box in order for me to train you to do that. I'd rather have you passionate about helping people, then the litter box scooping will come next. But overall character and quality of a person, we really look for somebody who is competent and comfortable enough as themselves, yet humble enough to reach out and ask questions. We don't know everything. We're still learning things 13 years into this, and it's only going to continue. And so being part of that, I need to reach out for questions and help and not just think I know everything, is a big, that humility aspect is something that we really look for in team members.
That peanut butter and jelly sandwich question, I've never heard it quite asked like that. And I think that's pretty smart. I want to just, if you'll indulge me for just a second, to dig into that. When you see someone answer that question, you can have someone that will say, well, I get two pieces of bread, I put peanut butter and jelly on it, I fold it together, and then you have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Technically, you're correct. But then you may have another person that says, well, I get two pieces of fresh sourdough. And then I get my favorite kind of peanut butter. And on the left slice, I cover every inch of the bread. And then the other side, I get my favorite jam, organic, of course, fair trade or whatever. And then I put it on the other side. And I want to make sure I get complete coverage. And then I marry the two, and then I wrap them up in a paper towel or I put them on a plate. You know, if someone is going to go to those links to explain to you the way they make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, when they're taking a report or explaining something to you, you're not going to be left wondering, or you're not going to have questions, because they're going to convey what they mean so succinctly. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes. I don't ever want to have a report that I send to a client and the client say, wait, what did you mean by this? What you said you gave my cat medications. They only get one medication. What did you give them? Right? That's a great example here.
Yeah.
I gave meds and I headed out the door. Meds? What do you mean meds? They get a Benadryl in the morning. What did you give them? So clarity, we believe to be clear is to be kind in all that we do, including in how we talk to our clients. And so when we can do that in a concise manner, in a straightforward manner, excuse me, in a professional manner, that's wonderful. When we can also do that with maybe a little bit of personality, a little bit of fun, a little bit of, we can start making it our own. And we really encourage that with our employees. One of the best examples of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, somebody was like, well, first I'd start as a farmer and I'd plant my wheat, in the, it was like,
oh my goodness, we got an origin story for the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
And it was funny. The way this person wrote was genuinely funny and engaging. And it was like, okay, like, I see what you did there, and we need to keep talking about this, right? Like, some people are like, well, I'm not God, so I don't know how to make you. Okay, fine. You're not happy. I get it. Move on. But we really want to make sure that when we're talking to clients, there's no confusion, and that's where, again, where that comfort and trust comes in, is when they know exactly what happened.
Sure. What types of failures do you see your employees encounter early on? And what's the best advice that you can give them just for failure in general? Because it's not a slam to say that you're going to make a mistake, because I've made them, you've made them. It's part of being a human being. We sometimes get things wrong. Even if we're trying to do the right thing, sometimes it blows up in our face. How you respond to that is a big part of how smoothly things go afterwards. So what's your advice for your employees when they make a mistake?
Yeah, I'll say I've been doing this for 13 years. I've made every mistake in the book, and I will make more. And I've probably made them 10 times worse than you have. So it's okay. Some ones that come to mind, big ones are forgetting to like lock a door, or forgetting that it was a feeding time. I forgot that I was supposed to feed at this particular visit. Or for the house, I forgot to turn off the light. And so, part of our quality control is we do periodic drive throughs where I'll come in, or another senior team member will come in after somebody has done a series of visits and just check on all of these things. We also require our employees to report out to the team of kind of what they did, kind of charting in a medical sense of, I did XYZ for each client. That helps us catch a lot of these things as well. But when we find things of like, oh, you forgot to turn off the lights, we'll sit down with them, and I again talk about mistakes. I'll own up to this one. When I was an aquarist at Bass Pro, I overfilled one of the aquariums in the showroom. The big water wheel in the
Mhm.
entryway.
Yeah.
I overfilled that. And there was no reason for me to have done that. I just wasn't paying attention. And I remember sitting down with my boss as after we had mopped up all of the camping equipment and off the floor, and all the trout were fine and okay.
Yeah.
He said, what were you thinking? And not in like an accusatory manner, but
Mhm.
in a,
How
let's
did you
get to the
get here?
bottom of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How like, where was your mind when you were doing this? Let's walk through your thought processes and understand what we can do to change those. And I really appreciate how that was handled, because he didn't sit down and go, "You idiot. How did you do this? This is the
Mhm.
most simple thing in the world. You have something around your neck to remind you. How did you get so distracted?" It was really helping figure out, how does Collin work? What's the support that Collin needs? So if I sit down and I go, Jack, let's figure out what you need to be successful here. You forgot to turn off the lights. Okay, well, remember, here's where that information is in the client profile in our software. Here's our process for reviewing, how we've trained to review all of this information prior to you showing up. Let's brainstorm some ideas to add in another step or two for you specifically to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Hmm. It can, yeah, I can see that. It can be a way to kind of improve your work processes and your workflow. So, um, most people will understand what you're saying, but then everybody thinks differently. So something that makes sense to you may not make sense to somebody else, and they'll make a wrong decision thinking they were doing the right thing, and then you have a mess.
Yeah, I tell all of our employees, new and those who've been with us for several years, like, sure, we have all of our policies and procedures. I've got a 180-page manual and training for all of our operations. I am willing to burn it all down if it's not actually helpful.
Mhm.
We will find the places that don't work anymore, that are outdated, that you find frustrating, and let's work together to make this better.
Are there certain soft skills that you find, the people that are applying to work for you? I would assume that because you have a route, things like punctuality and following a checklist and whatnot, attention to detail would be up there at the top of the list. But are there any soft skills or intangibles that you find with your more successful employees? As far as, man, I wish that everybody else would do things kind of like them in this regard.
Yeah, you mentioned attention to detail, timeliness, punctuality. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are kind of already baked in. Those are
Right.
the like minimum requirements.
Yeah.
um,
Right.
if we don't show up whenever we say we're going to show up, what's the point of all of this anyway? Like,
Sure.
why are we even here? Attention to detail. Yeah, we get a lot of detail. I when I do meet and greets, sometimes people just hand me a book, like a literal like I've been handed a laminated 3-ring binder before and been like, here's all the care for our pets. Great. Um, I think two things. One is adaptability. No pet. It's what's that old philosophy saying? You never step in the same river twice. You
Yeah.
never pet the same dog twice.
Sure.
You never, because the dog is constantly changing. Also, our schedule changes. As we were recording this, we were just hit with a random, massive amount of snow,
Hmm.
and we had to change our route. We had to delay. We had to drive slower. We had to alter walks. We had to have all of these kind of secondary and tertiary things that came up all of a sudden just today. Or maybe you should walk into a visit and you were supposed to find one dog and two cats, and instead you found two dogs and three cats because, oh, by the way, they adopted some dogs and they forgot to tell you about it. And, and you're like, oh, well, this is new. So that ability to be adapting. And so, how does this person handle change? Do they get shocked by it? Do they get
Mm.
frozen by it? Do they kind of roll with it? Can they take it in stride? Do they need to reach out for help? All of these kind of characteristics for when something changes suddenly, how do you respond? And that response too is the other thing of this level of communication. We require a high level of communication with our team. Everybody kind of needs to know what's going on, because the way we hire and we train, at any moment, if you get a flat tire, I've got 3 other employees who can possibly cover your visits, and they can just get swapped in at a moment's notice.
Hmm.
And that helps for our reliability. And so how do we communicate with one another? Am I an open communicator? Do I preemptively come to you with questions, with concerns, and problem solve through this? Or do I keep things really close to the vest? We really want to see somebody who is adaptable, who is kind of quick thinking, and who communicates really well and really early.
Hmm. I'm curious. You have a career with your wife. You own a business that's in pet care. Do you have dogs yourself, or do you come home and go, no pets?
So yeah, we shortly after Megan and I got married, we had said, okay, well, we need to wait a little bit to get a dog because we got to figure out who we are first. We've got to
Yeah.
figure out how we operate. Well, 2 weeks into our marriage, we were sitting on the couch watching a Saturday morning program or whatever, and they had this like most common, most popular pets in the United States program. And at each commercial break, she and I would just like staring at each other like, oh no, like I think we're about to get a dog.
Mhm.
and and so we found in Lubbock, Texas, a place called Dusty Puddles Docks and Rescue. They are no longer in operation, but this was a gentleman who worked for the railroad, and he was going blind. He had diabetes, and he had really considered ending his own life.
Hmm.
But when he realized that he had dachshunds in his house that he had had for years, who was going to take care of them? He credited them for saving his life, so he rededicated his life to saving theirs. So he created this Dusty Puddles Dachshund Rescue.
Hmm.
And we showed up and saw Kobe, our dapple dachshund, long hair dapple dachshund, and fell in love with him. And for the longest time, Kobe was our general manager because he was kind of the reason for our high quality and our high standards in our company of when we left, if we were to need something, what would we want? How would we want this handled? What level of detail would we need to
Mm.
feel comfortable and okay with this? He was really the driving force behind that. And he passed away suddenly about a year ago now. And that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through, especially guiding our kids, our two kids through that process of talking to them about that and working through that grief. And we didn't have a dog for a while, for about 9 months, and we were out for a family walk, and we try and do that every now and then.
Mhm.
And we look over, and there's a stray, dirty little corgi puppy running around the streets. And we got her, took her to the vet, got the scan, took her to the animal shelter, posted on Facebook. Nobody, 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 nobody. And eventually, after 2 months, our vet said, "Congratulations on your new dog." and so, and so we brought Cinnamon, a little corgi, into our lives, and that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a reminder to us of the challenges that pet owners face from the new puppy stages, also just breed specific things, getting to learn about those. And it was kind of a full circle thing for us. One thing that we provide and we do for our clients, and we open up to the community as well, as we do pet loss memorial events
Hmm.
where we once a year gather together and just host a time for people who have lost a pet recently to come and grieve and have community and be together. There's a bubble release and some music and stuff like that. We try and keep it really simple, but we went through that with Kobe last year after he had passed away earlier in the year. And it was just another grounding moment of, right, like this is another why, right? Help pet parents through every stage of life with their pet. And we know eventually there's going to be a stage of life where they don't have their pet. How can we
Mhm.
continue to support them? And then having Cinnamon come into our lives and reminding us of, yeah, and there's always going to be something new, and to stay open to those opportunities, to those possibilities, to continue to work hard in helping people.
Well, speaking of opportunity, where do you see the Funky Bunch going next? What's on your immediate horizon or your business goals?
Yeah, well, it's recording this kind of at the start of a new year, and so we're
Hmm.
we're really in that mindset of what do we do, and our business, pet sitting is a very seasonal business. This is something that a lot of new pet sitters, again, I'm specifically thinking of going to a client's home, not necessarily like boarding or daycare, but like pet sitting is very seasonal. People have travel, they have vacations planned, and there's these highs and lows throughout the year. And this is really hard to plan for. It's hard to manage, just from a business perspective, financially, knowing that you can have 1 month where you get $5,000, and then the next month you get $30,000. Right? It's kind of hard to plan and expect that kind of variation, and also to scale and manage and have balance, and then all this stuff. So what we are working on is, from a business perspective, finding more predictability in our services. So really working on finding ways to connect with people for dog walking specifically, or midday potty breaks and let outs. One of the services that we really love that we get to do are what we call adventure hikes. This is something that we're trying to grow more of. Adventure hikes are where we come over, we pick up your dog, we drive them to a nearby trail, and we hike with them for either an hour and a half or 3 hours, depending on what people want and kind of the condition of their dog, and then bring their dog back and settle them into the home. As well, again, when the client is away at work, not necessarily a vacation kind of thing. But just getting people aware of that and talking to people about that is kind of what this year really is all about. It's kind of the walks, the adventure hikes, and then we really do continue to see a big opportunity for cat owners in growing that service for them specifically.
That adventure hike sounds like a pretty good idea. I mean, if I was looking for a job, that would be something that, I mean, you get to go out in nature, go for a hike, and take a dog with you. There's no downside to that at all.
They are by far my favorite thing. And if I have opening in my schedule and we get one, I mean, it's so much fun getting to be out kind of in the middle of nowhere. We don't go out and hike like in the back country, they're local trails, that kind of stuff. But you still don't see a whole lot of people. And just to walk and hike in the springtime or even in the summer with the dog and play in the springs and walk in a river and go through a field. It's like, yeah, more of this is a lot of fun.
Sure. If folks want to find you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? I assume you have a website.
Yeah. Our website is funkybunchpetcare.com. You can get started there. There's our phone number at the top is 660-398-9833. Yes, we answer the phone. It rings right to my phone. So I'm happy to talk to you if you have questions, if you're looking to get started in pet care, or if you're looking for pet care. And then we're on social media, very active on Facebook and Instagram, both of which are at Funky Bunch Pet Care.
Hey, Collin, I really appreciate your time today. You provided a lot of insight into an industry that I really just didn't know much about, and what was there, and the pros and cons and everything. So thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
This has been a lot of fun. I will happily talk about this topic until I'm blue in the face. So anytime, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been my pleasure.
You bet, man. And that wraps up another episode of the Jobs Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you found that interesting. As always, I wait until the end of an interview to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. I feel it's important that I earn that support from you. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next one.